So in foster care, you have the black kids. They just assumed nobody was going to adopt them. And then you had, especially in El Paso, you had a lot of white kids. They were the first to get adopted. And there was me. I was biracial. I'm in the middle. I was not going to be adopted.
We'll discuss race and how it plays a factor and how we didn't even talk about this topic because we were afraid.
A Black Executive Perspective.
Welcome to a Black Executive Perspective podcast, a safe space where we discuss all matters related to race, especially race in corporate America. I'm your host, TonyTidbit.
And I'm your co-host, Chris P. Reed. We always like to start off by giving a shout out to our business partners at Code M Magazine. Code M Magazine, where their mission is saving the Black family by first saving the Black man. That is Code M Magazine, 2Ms.com. Check them out, CodeMMagazine.com.
Yes, definitely check them out. And today, we welcome Patrick Brown, CEO of Unity Communications, who will share his journey from Navy service to building a successful, self-funded global business with over 400 employees. He will discuss his upbringing, biracial identity, and military experience, highlighting how these shaped his leadership style. Patrick will also discuss his approach to scaling a BPO company, the benefits of bootstrapping, and his candid views on corporate DEI. He will also emphasize the value of a one global workforce mindset and how his passions as an athlete, DJ, and father shaped his approach to leadership.
So before we get too deep into it, let me just give a little more color commentary into who Patrick is as a person. So Patrick Brown is the founder and CEO of Unity Communications, as Tony stated, but it's an Inc. 5000 ranked business process outsourcing company that streamlines key services for corporate clients, allowing them to focus on growth. Patrick's career began in the Navy, the United States Navy, where he honed his skills as an electronics technician, specializing in complex IT infrastructures. His passion to solve problems and diverse collaboration led him to establish Unity Communications, which since its establishment has grown to a global firm of over 400 employees. Patrick emphasizes a strong DEI culture with Unity Communications, fostering an environment where employees can bring their authentic selves to work. Beyond leading a business, Patrick is also a dedicated father of three, passionate endurance athlete, a DJ, a role model, embodying the balanced approach between leadership and life. Patrick Brown, welcome to a Black Executive Perspective podcast.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get into the meat and potato of this, tell us a little bit about where you are and what's going on and where your family is.
Yeah, so I live here in Gilbert, Arizona. It's a pleasure to be on the phone with you and doing the podcast here remotely from the desert. We've been living in the valley here since 2002, right when I exited the service, raised three amazing children, built a company. Everything the American dream, is defined: building a business, buying a house, raising a family, being safe. We have accomplished that here in Arizona. It's been amazing.
Wow, buddy, that is awesome. And tell us about your kids.
So I'm at that stage where I miss them, but they're here. So between 20 years old, 16 years old, they seem to come and go. They're starting to deal with real problems of being able to make simple decisions. I've had a very difficult time dealing with the teenage side because, as we'll get into the program, how we grew up as Generation X and how they're growing up, two different worlds. We didn't have smartphones. They can't get off their smartphones. So having to adjust to the two older children has been an ongoing thing, I think, for your audience as well. And then, my 12-year-old daughter, she's just perfect right now because she still thinks she still looks up to me right now. She hasn't figured out what all that's wrong with me.
Right. Wow. So you're still her hero, which is great. So that is awesome.
For now.
Yeah, it definitely changes, right? It definitely, I got, my daughters are in the same age as your kids. So, and Chris has an older daughter as well, who's in college. So we definitely relate. But let me ask you this, man, because we're excited that you're on. We want to dive into your background. You have a very, your journey has been awesome and you've accomplished a lot. You've been through a lot. And so I know our audience is going to learn a lot from you sharing. So thank you for coming. But I wanted to ask you this question. Why did you want to come on? Because you got a huge company. You got a lot of things going on. Why did you want to come on BEP to discuss this topic?
So one of the important things that I don't get to discuss with a lot of people is when it comes to the Black experience, the biracial experience, I share a lot in common with the Black community. Um, Even in the beginnings of school and what I was, being accepted into the Black community, having Black friends, but also serving and being in those communities, I had realized even before I started the company, I had a lot more in common with these communities than I did with other communities. It was very much the struggle and the bond that I felt like I had um, with trying to figure out life because I didn't have resources. We didn't have resources. We had to figure things out for ourselves, but understanding, and I owe a lot of debt to the Black community because they pointed out things to me in my life that if I didn't figure out, I don't think I'd be where I am today. So I feel like I owe it a little bit to your community um, to give back because at the end of the day, you know, giving back is all we have. I need to try to make the next generation better, smarter, faster. And by sharing that knowledge and that experience, hopefully it will, create a positive change in somebody.
Wow, buddy. So I love it. And listen, let me just say this. Um, it's all of our communities. So I
Mhm.
love it that you want to share. We're excited that you're here. So you ready to talk about it, my brother?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm on here. Let's
All
go.
right, let's talk about it.
So, for us, the best place to start is at the beginning. You've obviously blossomed into everything I read, including a partridge in a pear tree, right? But how did it all come about? Can you give us a little more in-depth background of a young Patrick and how this, how the experiences in the environment actually can connect to who you are today and how it shaped your motivations?
So I would say probably the earliest sense of my interactions with the Black community was in foster care.
Okay,
So
wow, the
in
beginning.
foster care, um, you have the Black kids. They just assumed nobody was going to adopt them. And then you had, especially in El Paso, you had a lot of white kids. They were the first to get adopted. And there was me. I was biracial. I'm in the middle. I was not going to be adopted because there was a lot of family court stuff going on. And whenever white parents would come visit me and play with me, the black the black friends, my black, in that community, they would always say, listen, we feel sorry for you. We really truly do because you're in the middle. They don't understand, or you don't understand that you're not their first choice. You're a second choice. You're in the middle, but we know for a fact that we're not even on the table. We're not even on the menu. So they really kind of helped, and they kind of took me in a little bit and taught me a little bit of the street sense of surviving and looking out for yourselves. And they brought me in, but they really kind of gave me a sense of the fact that I was in this middle world and I needed to figure out really quickly where the angles were, where the truth was, where I belonged. And the truth was, I really didn't belong in either world. And I struggled with that a lot. But if it wasn't for the Black community really pointing out things that I didn't see that they already knew, I would not have been able to make and see different choices that I saw in other people in my life.
So, you know what? It's interesting that you talked about the foster system. I'm a court appointed advocate. And so I see this a lot with kids
Mhm.
when they have those visitations, things like that. How long were you in the system as things were getting fixed at home, or did things ever get fixed at home?
I was in the system for about 4 years.
Okay.
And in
Okay.
the system, they take you in, and then hopefully things at home get better, then they take you
Hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, the way the system is set up is you try to always try to make it work with your biological.
That's correct.
And it was a very difficult thing for me to manage and struggle with because, my father trafficked my mom. And so in the beginning of the stages where, how do I, how do I deal with this community? How do I deal with the fact that my mom from Asia, and, if you look at the history of American bases in Korea, trafficking women, that's where the entire pipeline started. And
Mm.
so it was very common for women to be trafficked from overseas in Asia to be brought over to America through the United States military. And that was my mom.
Wow. Okay. And now, was this your first revelation into that type of environment, or did you know and then something went wrong and that's how you got in the system? Or what was the, how did, and obviously you got out and made something damn well of yourself.
Yeah.
But, at that time, were you in a situation where you didn't feel like there was really a way out and you kind of found your lane?
You're so lost. You just
Yeah.
don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
They hand you this green, hefty garbage bag and they tell you everything that you own needs to go in that bag. You're coming with them.
Yep. Yep.
And it's a lot of what the foster kids understand. They show up with the bag and you just have to leave and you just don't know, you're just lost. And you just end up at this person's house and they try to be nice. And it's usually the first couple families that you really believe and you want to be close to. But then you realize everyone's lying. Everybody's
Mhm.
trying to get money. Nobody wants you here. You're just, yeah. So especially the black kids, they had accepted the fact that they were going to be in the system for a while
Mhm.
and nothing bothered them. They were strong.
Yep.
And so we would just go play ball. We would just go
Right.
skate. We
Yeah.
would just go run away. We'd go steal shit.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we would do.
Yeah. I mean, and you do have to at some point in time come up with like a day-to-day survive the day type situation and figure it out tomorrow. But obviously you started to be more futuristic in thought. And when did you realize, you know what, I'm going to turn the corner. I'm going to go get an education. Now, I see it, that you went to college here and did something with music, but was that before the Navy, after the Navy? How did that play out?
So this went on until eighth grade. And in
Mhm.
eighth grade, I met my choir teacher. Um, he was the first person that invested in me.
Mhm.
He, because of the choir and theater and all the different community programs involved in music, I just started to become involved in stuff that are more healthier. Around the junior high age is when the kids start hopping. And when I say hopping, usually in a crew of dealing drugs, you got a hopper that takes some money, and then you got somebody else that meets them down the streets that gives them the drugs. Both people can't be in the same place at once.
Mhm.
And then once you get caught up in the system, and you get addicted to that easy free money, you really it doesn't end well. You're almost already gone.
Mhm.
So this was a different course of action that I took because the community in music and choir and theater was not only was it a lot more stable and healthy, but it was away from that other part of life. And in El Paso in the 80s and 90s, it was getting dangerous.
Mhm.
And kids were getting shot, people were getting arrested, and ultimately, as my black friends told me that something ever happened to me, I've got nobody in prison that's got my back.
If you like what you hear and want to join us on this journey of making uncomfortable conversations comfortable, please subscribe to a Black Executive Perspective podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe now to stay connected for more episodes that challenge, inspire, and lead the change.
I'm not black, I'm not white, I'm not Mexican. I would be seriously messed up.
Mhm.
So I basically I just went down another route where a teacher had brought me into different communities, and I'm pretty sure he knew my situation at home.
Mhm.
And I wanted to be like that teacher. So once I got into music and choir and arts and theater, I wasn't very good. I wasn't super talented, but they just needed people to be involved. And so not only was I involved, I met an amazing community of people, mostly LGBTQ people that would take me in. They let me couch surf, but my grades got really good. I was very motivated. And my main motivation was to get out of El Paso. And the only way I can do that is if I got a scholarship. And so I worked really hard because when you grow up in that situation, you already know what your life is going to be like before you're 20. And if you don't want that life, this is the only way out. I did everything I could to get out of Arizona or out of Texas into Arizona. I knew I couldn't go to school in Texas.
Mhm.
I'd already met and been part of so many Texas organizations, and they were not positive for me, as you
Mhm.
can imagine.
Mhm.
Wow, buddy. Wow.
Yeah.
I think that, you said a couple wonderful things there, which is you found your lane and you found your community. I know earlier you said you weren't part of either community. And ultimately, by a lot of, fates of luck, you not only found a community, but you found a role model. And I had mentioned you as a role model earlier. So I'm glad that you were able to exemplify that person who had sown into you so
Sure.
many years ago. But now you went to school. And then how did school end up with you deciding to get on a boat and learn about IT? Because
So
that's not where I
yeah.
see this going.
So when I went to ASU to escape,
Hmm.
but once I found myself at Arizona State,
Hmm.
um, I wanted to be like my role model, just like everybody else. I wanted to be a teacher.
Hmm.
And then so when I, in college, when I started doing my student teaching, I realized how much I hated that job, that I was being disrespected, that I didn't have the patience. And when you don't grow up with a center and you don't grow up in a family environment where you know certain rules of how to talk to people, households, all these different things, you're really set up to fail when you get out as an adult. And so when I was trying to talk to kids about, doing simple programs, doing simple homework assignments, because of the way I talk to people and because of the way I didn't understand social cues, it was a disaster.
Hmm.
And not only that, I was working two jobs, waiting tables and doing some computer work at the Arizona State Commons. And I was making twice as much as those teachers. And so my question to myself is, why do I want a job that I don't like when I can make more money waiting tables? So I struggled a lot in college until I had found out that the Navy was looking to take people, place them in Asia.
Hmm.
And ultimately, I thought to myself, if I could figure out a way to live in Asia and find out a little bit about myself and to be with Asian people, sign me up. And within, I think, 3 months, I was on a bus going to Great Lakes for boot camp. I I dropped out of school. I didn't care.
Hmm.
And when you think about the where you come in life, and everybody talks about their parents and expectations, I was in a situation where I don't have any expectations. I can go where I want. So it was a very easy decision for me. You know what? I'm going to go live in Tokyo. Fuck yeah, let's go.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Now, let me say this. The interesting part about your story is one of my first roommate in school after I finished playing sports was a gentleman from Vietnam,
Hmm.
and one of the things that he said was that the reason why he went the school route was because where he was from, the military was a thing that was mandated. And so he was determined not to be a military person because he had a contentious relationship with his father and blah, 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 blah. You actually repeated the pattern of military service. Was that ever a thought in your mind at that time that, you know what, I'm going to go so left of my history that I'm going to deny myself these opportunities? Or were you like, look, I just got to go get it any way I can get it?
No, it was a complete business transaction.
Okay.
You would put me in Japan for 6 years with my own apartment,
Mhm.
and I get to see the world. Done.
Mhm.
That was it. I didn't think of anything else because I knew I couldn't be a teacher. And I'll never forget this memory. The memory is I'm laying on my back in front of the library, just looking at the clouds, and the world's moving without me, and I'm just sitting still. And I just could feel the fact that, until I get up and move and and do something with my life, the world's going to keep spinning. It's not going to wait for me to catch up. So when I discovered that opportunity, it really deepened a part of me that I really need to understand my Asian self, because this part of me, the half white part, was not, is just kind of marred by the fact that this Asian side of me is, because you grow up in Texas and you get tired of answering the questions, where are you from? And you tell them I'm from Texas, and they ask you, no, where are you really from? Is your mom some type of Vietnamese, some Japanese thing? Like you hear so many interpretations of what they believe you are. And ultimately it affects you as a child.
Right.
You're like, I don't belong here. I'm not part of this culture. There's nothing Asian about where I grew up, yet that's what people see you and they assume things, which is why I relate to the Black community really well, because they just assume that I'm good at chess. They just assume that I'm the model minority, and I'll follow and do things without question. Like there's these assumptions that because I don't have blonde hair and blue eyes, that I'm not from America, especially in Texas. And
Right.
so I really wanted to explore that Asian side of me, because then you fantasize about, Japan and samurai and ninjas and all the different things there. And that was another journey in itself.
Right. Right. And just so I'm clear here, what is your racial makeup? What part of Asia?
So my mom is half Korean and half Japanese.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So
Got it.
it's very much assumed she was a child of war when Japan invaded Korea, which put her in a position where she was trafficked.
Got it. Got it. Got it. I was sitting here listening, and I was, you were in the Navy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a ex-military veteran. I was in the Army. And I was sitting here as I'm listening to your story. I'm thinking about the movie A Few Good Gentlemen, An Officer and a
Mm-hmm.
Gentleman, right? Where
Sure.
Richard Gere, grows up in the Philippines. His father is a Navy guy, a chief petty officer, and he
Mm-hmm.
grows up there, and then he gets beat up by the
They steal his
Filipino
watch.
kids. Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
But then he joins the Navy because he wants to, fly jets, and he had to learn a lot of lessons in terms of being a leader, what an
Yeah.
officer and a gentleman, what that actually meant. It wasn't about just stepping over people and treating people like trash. So talk to us a little bit. You made that journey. You dropped out of school to go to the Navy. Talk a little bit about the skills that you learned that helped you build your company and helped shape you from a leadership standpoint and how to deal with people.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're in the Navy and you're on a ship, you have 350 people that need to make that ship go. And when I was an IT person, electronics technician. So my job depended on me interrupting other people's jobs. So if I need to fix something, I need access to your space. And if you know sailors, like soldiers, what are they going to get out of it, right? Like if you're going to kick me out of my space, how are you going to make it convenient for you? So you're learning to wheel and deal a little bit on a ship that, hey, I need to work in your space. Here's some cigarettes. Here's some food. I get your watch for you. So you start to make little deals with people so that you are going to inconvenience them. And the thing about the Navy, if you don't do your job, work gets around fast, and then all of a sudden you're labeled as a skater, as they would say.
Right.
You don't ever want to have that label because you get the worst food, you get the worst shifts, and nobody wants to hang out with you. You're ostracized. So the peer pressure within the Navy, just do your job. Nobody cares where you came from. We all get paid crappy money. We all get you know, we all miss our families, we all miss everybody, but it's the fact that if you don't do your job, you're held accountable. And your job starts off very simple. You do the worst job that nobody wants to do as a ranking FNG. You know what the FNG stands for? Fucking new guy, right?
Right, right.
So do your job, help your fellow shipmate out, no excuses. I was up for 3 days straight trying to fix the radar because without the radar, the ship can't go anywhere.
Right.
So there's just no excuse. And you have to work with people of every different economic, social, religious background. So what ends up happening is the leadership skills I developed in the Navy was nobody cares. Get your job done. Once you get the job done, maybe we'll like you. And when I work for clients and when I take on jobs and prospects, I kind of take on that same aspect that before I can invoice you, I have to prove that I did a good job. I have to prove that I can work with all people in the project and make them happy. And you have to be very clear. Sailors and soldiers, they're not the smartest academics in the world. You need to be very clear, very concise, and if you miss something, they're gonna tell you. And have tough skin. Like the feedback you're gonna get if you didn't do a good job or not, there's nothing you're gonna do. You just have to eat it. So because of that environment, when I got to the civilian world, it was like everything's so easy. You just got to do what you're told, and then you leave. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing though. Knowing that you just got finished talking about people skating, that
Hmm.
means people who not doing their jobs, right? And let's be fair though, too, right? In the military, it is a very linear hierarchy. So,
Yeah.
in other words, it doesn't have to be a smart order. It doesn't have to make sense. If somebody says
Hmm.
do it, you got to do it. All right. Where in the business world, they don't really have to do it, right? Because at the end of the day, the rules are totally different from a human resource standpoint, blah, blah, blah. So
Sure.
tell us a little bit in terms of your style. How do deal with conflict in terms of you got 400 employees that work for you, right? And
I
I
do.
imagine they're all great, but let's be fair though, along the way, you probably had some that wasn't all that great. So how did you deal with that in terms of making sure that they were bringing that 100% every day to make sure that Unity Communications was thriving?
So I would say 90% of the hires that we know is not going to work out, we identify within 30 days. I'm going to know within 30 days if you're going to work out or not. Over
Right.
30 days, we're pretty good at figuring out your habits and your patterns. We often say, I hope the person at the interview shows up for the job. And so we have some really good ways of figuring out quickly whether or not you can adapt. Also, for my managers and my leaders, I will actually create a crisis. You could figure out who your shipmates are if you create a crisis by how they react. Are they going to fight or are they going to fly? Are they going to try to solve the problem? And I'm just asking if people try. And if they don't want to be involved in curing a crisis, and it could just be a minor crisis, and they happen almost every day at our company in some form or fashion. We had typhoons, we had this, with that. So very, very quickly figure out if they can solve problems in a crisis, and figure out who is going to be on an account or in my team after 30 days. And
Right.
then I support them the whole way. I really do everything I can to serve them. I put down processes and procedures to really understand, is this someone who learns by doing? Is this someone who learns by studying? Is this someone who learns by watching? So we really put a lot of work and effort into figuring out what motivates you, what is your currency, and then we try to adapt ourselves to really, curate and mold you and grow. But I also am not afraid of pulling the cord. I'm like,
Right.
listen, we just had this with somebody in our company the other day that they were the person we needed when we were small, but we're big now.
Right.
It's not the person we need anymore. So here's 4 months severance. Thank you.
You made a statement, and it was about the level of direction required. So from the idea, my third roommate in college was actually a Navy guy. And
Sure.
so one of the things, was that he was real big on hierarchy, following orders, structure, things of that nature, which actually imparted some things into my personality as I grew as a man. But the idea of the stakes are so high in the military that everybody doesn't have to be smart, but everybody has to listen. Everybody has to follow order. Everybody has to be receptive to direction. Can you run a company? You'll burn people out if you ran them that way. Let's just be honest. That's why these tours are short, and the times that you are in these roles don't last forever when you're in the military. How do you find that calibration of making sure you're not too dogmatic and running these folks into the ground by being militaristic, and allowing for them, meeting them where they are from an education perspective or an aptitude perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I like to put people in A, B, or C categories. You
Okay.
have your A players. Those are your generals. Those are your officers. That are people that are going to fight in the trenches with you. And then you have your B players. They're they have a lot of their own goals, and they're going to be with you for a while, but ultimately you kind of know that they may outgrow or do something else. And then you have your C players. C players they're going to clock in, they're going to do the least amount of work required to not get fired, and then they're going to clock out. You need all three. For me, if I know this is somebody, they just want a job, they just want to pay the bills, and then at the end of the day, they just want to go home and watch Netflix. That's fine. Just make sure, I call it the 80% rule. They can work at a capacity of about 70 to 80%, and you create those, metrics for the client you're working at, because a 70 to 80% level of intensity can be sustained over a long period of time. You could never have somebody put in 120% for years. It's just going to not work out. So we just create a good workflow and structure that for C players, if we get 75%, that is enough to justify our billings. You're not going to have a great career with us. You'll probably, over a period of a year or two, you'll probably find something that pays 50 cents more per hour, $1 more per hour. But that's okay, because that's what you want. And while we're in this relationship, those are the expectations. Now, we have about a 94% retention rate, simply because we try to identify those C players and figure out what is their currency. Do they want a 410s type of schedule? Do they want education? And then we try to add emotional value or emotional salary. So not only are they getting the basic pay that they want, but they're also understanding that I'm okay giving you skills that you'll take with you to your next job, because the contract is, while you're working with us, I want to make you into a better person or skill, even if I don't necessarily directly benefit from it monetarily. What will happen is you'll tell other people this is a great place to work as a startup job, and I'll find somebody, and then you'll go on your way. I am okay in understanding that this is not your forever job. But while you're with us, I want to make it a positive experience, and I can help you accomplish your goals in the meanwhile. So, and then the A players, they're probably going to be with me for long. So I categorize them into 3 different sections and manage them appropriately.
And so, tell us a little bit about Unity Communications, my brother. What made you found it? What do you guys do? How are you, bringing a value to your customers? Because at the end of the day, you kind of bootstrapped it, if I remember correctly, right? You built it from
Yes.
nothing. And to build a huge organization with 400 employees, that's not luck. So let's hear a little bit about that.
So I first built my customer service team out of the need to take care of the accounts. So at that time, I did a lot of IT consultant project management. But on the strategic side, you still need people to do a lot of the level 1 basic tier 1 work. So I built a small team in Tempe, Arizona, and in order to attract talent, I had to find people on the edges, maybe single moms who couldn't work her schedule, people that had challenges entering the normal corporate jobs. I became very flexible and worked with them, and I built them. The problem I was having is as I built teams in the United States, I started to lose people to bigger companies because other companies could offer double the pay, triple the pay. And as a small business, I couldn't do that. So what my Navy friend suggested is I start hiring people in the Philippines to take some of these roles because I couldn't, not only could I not attract the talent with my small business, but two, they were quickly outgrowing me because 90% of work done in a business is entry level data entry work. It's not complex, surgery skills.
Right.
So I find people at 30,000 a year, they quickly grow to 80,000 a year, and I can't afford them anymore. And
Right.
I don't want to stop them from taking care of their families. But as I started building infrastructure in the Philippines, I was able to take on more projects and pay people more. And all of a sudden, I had this global team where in Asia, we did the detailed level one work that required lots of hands-on manual processes. And then in the United States, people were taking on more revenue generating roles, more sales roles, more complex problem task roles. And then eventually my clients came to me and they said, hey, you have a great team. Could you build us a team like that in the Philippines? And so I started building teams for other people and creating a global workforce for them while they grew and they were hiring people in the US. And I became very good at creating the outsource competition conversation where at the time it was frowned upon or judged that outsourcing is bad and it's evil while they're talking to me on a BlackBerry Bold that's made from parts from all over the world.
Right.
And when I would see the hypocrisy of everybody saying, you shouldn't outsource, everything in the United States was being manufactured and parts putting together between raw materials, between supply chains. This is a global world. Why are people exempt? Because last I checked, uh, America is made from people from all over the world and it's running fine. And so and then it comes from the fact that the people overseas want these jobs, and the people here in the United States, they want the jobs, but you need to quickly move them up. You cannot have a person in the US working an entry level job for more than 6 months to a year and keep them. You have to find a place for them.
Hmm.
But the reality is when you have a business, when you run a business, 90 most of the minutia is on tier one. So by being able to understand labor forces pros and cons in each region of Asia, Latin America, Europe, you can create a global workforce that really is tuned to your ultimate service delivery.
Hmm. Buddy, that is, I love your mindset in terms of how you looked at that, right? Because, one or two things could have happened. You could have
Right.
listened to the pressure of people saying you shouldn't do this or we don't want that, and then decided to go somewhere else, right?
Right.
But also what you did is really focused on, you know what, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because I'm providing a service to a lot of, different other companies that can help them grow. And then more importantly, that money is not my employees. I'm also helping them in the different countries that they are provide a
Mm-hmm.
living for their family and stuff as well. So talk a little bit about, because not every organization, we're in, well, let's go to here. We just had an election. Okay. Where, right now we're in a situation where there's been so much xenophobia. All right. When it comes to foreign people and stuff to that nature,
Mm-hmm.
you have a business that, is global, but uses a lot of people around the globe. Talk a little bit about what you foresee in terms of this new administration. Is it going to be a situation where it affects your business from a negative, positive standpoint? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes. So we are already starting to feel the impact of decisions of the Trump administration. and the first place that it's impacting is Mexico.
Mhm.
So right now, I have a hospitality company that is very concerned that they are going to lose a lot of their legal labor, not because their people are illegal, but they have a family member or somebody else that may be deported. And now the question is, if this person moves to Mexico, can you legally hire them and we outsource through you so it's legal? So there are, for my business, for the outsourcing business, BPO, businesses understand that labor in the United States, there's just not enough people.
Right.
You look at, there's just not. The healthcare, I mean, if you think about all the nurses that are working in the United States from the Philippines, good luck operating a hospital without any Filipino nurses. It's just not going to happen. So, what is going to be a good push, which I feel like this administration is going to force, is more legal methods of being able to bring in people, because the right is very upset, and as they should, with a lot of the illegal immigration coming in. They want a path for it to be legal, and with I don't think it's possible to deport 14 million people. However, they want to empower the agencies to be able to deport the ones with criminal. But the xenophobia of especially Haitian immigrants eating the dogs and the cats, it's terrible. It's absolutely wrong to think of these amazing people who are struggling in these communities. These people are caretakers of elderly. These
Right.
people do so many of the things that make America run. Um, I see this administration and the political side of it. It's actually going to be good for my business, because now people are going to need outsourcing companies to help lay the groundwork for legal ways to do business instead of illegal ways.
Interesting. Let me ask you this. In terms of your employees, when they were listening and hearing, all this
Mhm.
type of rhetoric, did that cause any angst within your organization?
It sure did, especially with me, because when you are involved, as I am, in a global community, you are often associated with the boorish behavior of a lot of Americans. When Americans go overseas, they're often ridiculed because of how loud they are, how and the way they act, and you're grouped in with them, and it's very, very hard to see a party really think of immigrants as this, when every kid I know is playing Fortnite with kids in Korea, Russia, and they're having a great time.
Right.
So our generation of children that are playing video games online, making content, doing TikTok videos with everyone around the world, that is their immigrant experience. This generation of people in power today and their views on immigration, I don't think it holds water with the new generation, simply because if you know any kid that plays online games, they have friends in China they're playing with, Korea, Japan, and they make the same jokes we make here. Their food's actually better. So so while I wince at the fact that I see and hear a lot of these comments from the U.S. Political party, and it makes me sad, I just look at the generation of my kids and understanding they are living, breathing, and walking with a device in their hand that connects them to the world. And they see a lot of beauty and culture outside of the United States.
You had a interesting background where you took what could be perceived as a negative and obviously have augmented it into a positive as it relates
Mhm.
to diversity and inclusion. You talked about the choir and singing and the LGBTQ community and things of that nature. How do you infuse that or incorporate that into the company from a communal aspect? Because although you're doing business in Mexico and in the Philippines, these cultures are very different. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
I ran a division in Nanjing, China, and the tough part about it was when I got with those guys, they didn't really have a cultural practice of initiative or inferring. And so I had to be so prescriptive on everything I took because they wouldn't go off script and do anything not to get in trouble, right? And I wanted them to show initiative and drive and all that stuff you say, the verbose American mentality of coming in and taking the bull by the horns. That was something I had to get over quickly because they just didn't have that in their cultural dynamics. How do you migrate and mitigate those things from a culture perspective when you run a global workforce?
So the most important thing for me to do, especially when I went into Mexico, is to establish trust. So the first thing I do is I will find the first couple employees and I'll actually run through their neighborhoods. I love to run. And then I get to know their neighborhoods. I get to know their schools. I smell the streets. I start to participate in local events. I want them to care because until they feel like they could be vulnerable, they're not going to trust you. And then until they feel like you want, like I tell people all the time, I want you to make a decision. And it doesn't have to be the right decision. It just has to be a decision. And then you have to back them up on whatever decision you make, even if it's wrong. So when you establish trust from the beginning, when you visit their neighborhoods, when you buy them lunch, when you just do the things with you as a person that you really do care about them and their success, once they trust you and you're not going to fire them, and they're used to this very authoritarian, very strict, you can't mess up once or you get terminated. Once they can like open up a little bit, then the dominoes will start to fall. But if you are a CEO that wants to manage behind spreadsheets and make decisions based on emails and texts, then good luck.
There was a term that I was introduced to when doing research for this conversation, and I want you to give me a little more color into it. And the term was tech native, and I'd never heard that term before, and it was something that you used in one of your conversations. What is a tech native?
So whatever tech somebody's using, you need to know how to use it too. So if you are talking to the current generation of people always on their mobile devices, you need to spend a few days off your laptop and learn how to live, breathe, and function within their worlds. Because if you don't understand their tech, if you don't understand how they're browsing, if you don't understand why somebody could talk with their thumb and text at the same time, if you're not trying to emulate what they do on the tech side, you're going to lose a lot of any kind of credibility you have in reaching them.
It's time to rethink your protein. AgileLab's protein bars are crafted with high-quality protein, double the leucine, and enriched branched-chain amino acids, essential for optimal muscle recovery. Finally, a protein bar that works as hard as you do. So visit agilelabs.com and use the code BEP to get 20% off. That's agilelabs.com, promo code BEP.
And it doesn't even have to be good. You could say, hey, I was trying to talk and text like you did. Can you show me how you're doing it? And I found that they're using this new app where they smooth their thumb around to do words. It was pretty easy to learn, but if you learn their tech, you basically learn a new part of their language.
Buddy, let me ask you this. So, and I got two questions because you're a DJ, you're an endurance athlete. Obviously you're a father, you have a lot of passions, your experiences that you had to overcome growing up, the way you grew up, foster care, whole 9 yards, right? And then you became successful, okay? And so the question I have, and you have a global business, so talk to us a little bit about that, that global workforce mindset. What do you mean by that? And then dive into, the passions of being an endurance athlete, a DJ, a father. How has it shaped you in terms of moving forward as well?
All right, I'll start with the first question. So when we talk about a global workforce, if you do your research, most people right now spend more research doom scrolling on Instagram for an hour or two at night than it would take you to learn this. And Latin America, hospitality, generosity, really overall outgoing, very, especially if in certain parts, very direct. You always know I always knew where I stood with my Latina girlfriends at any given day. They had no problem telling me exactly what was on their minds. Um, Asia, very more communal, very passive, very. So what you start to understand is different people of cultures have different strengths for different types of work.
Right.
So in Asia, detailed, repetitive, so accounting, customer service, very nice, following through on a certain things. So when I would say very good at building the Legos, but not very good at coming up with the drawings. And then in Europe, design, feel, color. I mean, who doesn't have Scandinavia, some type of Scandinavian furniture in their house, right? More complex furniture creation. So when you start to understand that and you want to go to market building a certain product, you could then start to picture out, where, if you need a global workforce, what would make sense on what you're trying to do. And so when I talk about a global workforce, many of my clients are in every industry between healthcare, finance, software as a service. So if you have a SaaS product with healthcare, a great place to be would be in the Philippines for customer service tech because they have a lot of healthcare background. They're very nice over the phone. But if most of your people are going to be bilingual, then Mexico would make better sense. But if most of your people are going to be purchasing luxury brands, the United States that makes the most sense because that is a very complex buying measurement. So in the United States, one of the strengths we have is we do difficult things. We create very complex products and services that require lots of rule breaking, lots of disruption. A SaaS platform. All these things are usually designed in the U.S. but executed with labor and staff all over the world.
Mm.
Bangladesh, India, really good for coding, software development. So, between what your product service delivers, listen, if you could find someone locally in your hometown, there's no better advantage than the whole, someone nearby. But if not, you have a global workforce that want to do these jobs. And when you tap into those markets, you are no longer bound by barriers. You can get talent in South America and all these different places with companies like ours. So I hope that answers the global workforce.
Oh, buddy, flat out. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Talk a little bit about your passions, buddy, and how they spilled over into everything that you do.
So I first started getting into endurance running simply because I wanted to be an athlete, and I always loved running. But where it came together was I don't have no ball handling skills. I don't have good eye-hand coordination. I'm not the typical Asian badminton player. Or there's all of these things that I just don't have skills to do. And when I went to an Ironman race and I saw the people finishing, I didn't see sculpted athletes that were going to win Mr. Olympia. I just saw regular people with beer bellies and a little bit extra, tires and, people that just at the end of the day, people who finish endurance races, we don't look all that pretty. But one of the things they could do is they could take pain, they could suffer, they can endure. And what I wanted to do is I just wanted to have like an accomplishment athletically to my name. So I set out to try to finish my first Ironman, and it took me 4 years of training to do. And the thing about the Ironman and endurance training that was so appealing to someone like me, it was there's only one simple rule. Don't quit.
Mm.
You you know, how much skill do you need to run? None. Ride a bike, swimming a little bit, but you could do it all on your back. The the whole process of becoming an Ironman was you are consistent. And a lot of people think it's this huge effort. It's not. I train for an hour a day, Monday through Friday, 3 hours on Saturday, and 4 hours on Sunday. You have that time. Um, and if you don't have that time, you can make that time. And I did it while the kids were asleep.
Right.
And I found during that process that the business ideas that came to me during these training sessions were some of the best business ideas I ever came with because I was not distracted. I had nothing to do but think. And I had the separation of another world into this. So my journey of creating and becoming an Ironman actually was so good for my business. I actually charted sales and training. If I was training, my sales were up. If I wasn't, I was I wasn't selling. I wasn't really performing. So they became very they become very necessary for me to be an accomplished executive because without my runs, without my bikes, I made bad decisions because I just needed to clear my head.
No, I was just saying that was so cool that you said that because it reminded me. Probably the best time as a leader in my career was we moved to Mississippi and we got a lot of land, and I used to cut the grass on Saturday and Sunday because if I did it in one day, the lawnmower would overheat, and I
Oh,
would be out
sure.
there. It was very cathartic, right? Because you're in
Uh-huh.
your own world, you got your headphones on, and you're just thinking of all kind of great ways to enhance who you are and what you deliver. And so, just like with obviously, just letting the audience know, you don't have to go out there and beat your body up. You can just cut your grass. You can just cut your grass.
Sure. Yeah. And the DJ thing so when I would go running, I often listened to long sets of electronic music.
Mhm.
And I got to the point where, because I'm doing all this training, I've been through every Spotify list. I've been through all of the mainstream. So I started listening to DJ sets on Mixcloud, where it was a continuous 1 hour performance of somebody. And I never really picked up DJing until one night we were going through a very explosive growth. And I saw these names on my payroll register. And I realized I didn't know who they were. I'd never met them. And it really bothered me because this is somebody that contributes to my kids going to dance class. This is somebody that helps put food on the table for me.
Right.
And I don't even know who they are. I'm a, I'm that guy now. I'm that guy who doesn't even know who's working for him. And I was so upset. And I was just thinking to myself, how do I create a way that I could connect to everybody? Because I can't know 300 people, 200 people. How do I figure out a way to say I really care about what you do? And throughout that week, I was just busting my head. And then I go onto Instagram and I see this 10-year-old Indian girl. She's just scratching on a couple of rain turntables, scratching just such a badass. And it wasn't super good, but she recorded herself scratching to a couple of hip hop artists, and it was good. And I thought to myself, this girl has bigger balls than I do. What's my fucking problem?
Right.
So I decided to pick up a controller, and I just went in and started learning. And then I hired a teacher because I have money now.
Mhm.
And I just never quit. And so my overall goal was, you know what? Maybe I won't remember your name. Maybe I can't keep up with all the different people. We're hiring 25 people this month. But you know what? I'm going to play you a song. I'm going to play you a song and I'm going to share a vibe with you. And I am going to show you in the events and stuff that we do that I'm going to put my mind and effort into creating a set and to share that love of music, because if there's anything in the world that will keep you, relatable. It's that we all love music.
Right.
We all really can feel a vibe of, you ever been on the dance floor and that DJ's killing it? You're friends with everybody on that dance floor. You are. And you could say to anybody, however they look, say, that was so great. What was your favorite song? And they will tell you. And you're gonna have to listen because you're gonna talk for a while. And so I wanted to create that kind of vibe. And the only way that I would be able to do is if I learned how to DJ.
Right.
And so so now I produce a set every week and I share it with my people and they listen to it, and then I get to play it at events, and it's really, really cool. I really like it.
Awesome, my brother. Awesome. So listen, as we close, give us some final thoughts. What do you want to leave the audience on what you discussed today?
So we just had a very divisive election. No matter what side you're on, the government isn't going to fix anything tomorrow. You're still going to wake up in the same house you were with before the election. The government isn't going to come and rescue you. Now, they may fix some things and they may break some things, but the system inherently doesn't really work for individuals on a certain level. You have to go and get it done. Regardless of where your opinion on where you think America is going to go, there is no better place in the world to build a business and to have opportunity. And you're not a victim. At the end of the day, you can get a federal tax ID for $20. You can go get your bank account. You can go out there and sell. Even if you just adhere to less than 0.1% of the population of the United States, that's enough market share to make you very successful. You just have to put in the work, and you have to do all of the things you don't like doing to get to do the things you want to do. So don't sit around and blame people that, oh, the government, oh, the people, oh, someone's racist, oh, I don't feel like I belong. I'm living proof that nobody cares. Put in the work, because we are all living difficult lives. And so it's what works for you. What are your goals? If your goal is to belong to 20 different softball clubs and work 20 hours a week, that's fine. But there's that opportunity in the United States that you don't have in any other country. It's very easy to go out there and build here. So go build. The tools are there. And if you look on YouTube, there's people half your age that are building. And not to be, trying to put some urgency on you, it's just that there's not any time to waste. If you spend 4 hours watching football on Sunday, but you complain that you're not getting anywhere in life, the problem's you.
Good business. Good business. So we definitely want to thank Mr. Patrick Brown, CEO, founder of Unity Communications, for coming on. Thank you for listening to this and sharing this opportunity with us. So as we come to a close, it's absolutely time for Tony's Tidbit.
Yeah, I think it's time for Tony's Tidbit. So number one, I want to thank my brother here, Patrick Brown, for sharing his insights and thoughts. And so today's tidbit is always about, it encapsulates the episode. So today's tidbit is: true leadership means creating something greater than yourself while remaining grounded in your values and commitment to your people. Each challenge you face is a chance to demonstrate resilience, sharpen your vision, and uplift those around you. And you heard a lot of that from Patrick Brown. So we want to thank him for appearing on the Black Executive Perspective podcast. Stay tuned, buddy. We're going to have you come back in to do our call to action.
So at this point, what we'd like to do is remind you to tune in to the weekly segment, Need to Know with Nsinga. This is where Dr. Nsinga Burton on a Black Executive Perspective podcast dives into timely and crucial topics that shape our community and our world. Make sure you tune in to gain the unique insights and deep understanding of the issues that matter to us. You don't want to miss this.
Absolutely. You don't want to miss it. And I'm glad you didn't miss today's episode, Valor and Vision, a veteran's courageous journey to founder and CEO.
We have a distinct and intense desire to diminish discrimination wherever it rears its ugly head. And one of the ways in which we do that is our call to action. That is LESS. And so we'd like to give our call to action where the L is for learn. Learn to educate yourself on racial and cultural nuances. And what I learned in this episode was learn to find your community. And so obviously there's different ways in which you can tie into and touch different communities. And what Mr. Patrick Brown did was found his music community. He found his servitude community. He found his social and heritage communities, and make sure, and he had a desire to endure and to learn about those things. And so make sure you're always trying to learn.
Yes, and E stands for empathy. Once you've learned about other different people, their perspective, now you can be able to put yourself in their shoes, right? Which is going to help you connect with them and, more importantly, understand the things that they've been through.
And S stands for share. So basically, insights to enlighten others is what I want everybody to share is just get started. Suck at something new.
The final S is stop, right? So we want to stop all forms of discrimination as it walks in our path. So if Aunt Jenny says something at the Thanksgiving table that's inappropriate, you say, Aunt Jenny, we don't believe that. We don't say that. And you stop it right in its tracks. So if everybody can incorporate less, LESS, we'll build a more fair, more understanding world. And more importantly, we'll all see the change that we want to see because less will become more.
So we want to encourage you and remind you to tune in to future episodes and check out past episodes that we've had on a Black Executive Perspective podcast. But make sure you go to the website. Also sign up for the newsletter. Review us, rate us, like us, subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. Help us understand where we can impact you better. And we'll make sure that we put that on the docket for future instances. And Tony, where can they find us?
They can find a Black Executive Perspective podcast on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever they get their podcasts. And you can follow a Black Executive Perspective podcast on all of our social channels of LinkedIn, YouTube, X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at a Black Exec. For our fabulous guests, my man, the global insight man, Patrick Brown. We want to thank him for joining a BEP. For the co-host with the most, Chris P. Reed, for always bringing knowledge and the sharing. I'm Tony Tidbit. We talked about it. We learned about it today. We love you. And guess what? We're out.
A Black Executive Perspective.